Welcome into this episode of Jags Now, presented by our wonderful friends over at PrizePicks. On today's episode, the Jaguars made multiple roster moves. We're going to be talking about that. They made, I think, a really key signing for just kind of the direction that they want to go to for the rest of this training camp. And then also just a major training camp takeaway that I thought was an interesting note from practice and something that could be a trend as we get closer to the start of the season that I wanted to touch on. This is Jags Now, as I mentioned. And guys, if you enjoy the content we're bringing you here on the channel, consider hitting that subscribe and like button. It would greatly be a help to us here on the channel, and it's 100% completely free. In fact, if you want to hit that subscribe button, set a notification or reminder in your phone from a week from now. Give us a week, and if by a week's time you don't want to be subscribed to us anymore, then you just hit that unsubscribe button. No harm, no foul. It doesn't cost you a dime. So without any further ado, we're going to get into today's episode where Jaguars PR tweeted this out that the Jaguars, let me just pull this tweet up here. The Jaguars have made a signing. Jahlani Tavai has been signed to the roster. Additionally, the team waived linebacker Jared Bartlett with an injury designation. Bartlett obviously suffering an injury a couple of days ago in practice where he was carted off the field. And he was kind of initially brought in as a linebacker kind of replacement-ish for, when the Jags had to, unfortunately, deal with the Jack Kaiser injury, which Kaiser got injured the first training camp practice period for the Jaguars on like the fourth play or whatever it was. They bring in Bartlett as a linebacker just to kind of fill in terms of a depth piece in that linebacker room. And now with Bartlett, it looks, or at least sounds like, we didn't really get an update on his injury. He was carted off the field, but he was literally signed 4 days ago. He unfortunately got injured, and now they're waiving him with an injury designation. And they bring in Jahlani Tavai, who he last played with the New England Patriots back in 2025, appeared in 12 games, had 42 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and a forced fumble as well. So pretty active. I did talk to our Patriots host here at Chat Sports, just, wanted to get a little more insight on Jahlani Tavai. He says he's good at run defending, not great in the pass coverage department, but a good rotational guy and is not afraid to mix it up with getting some tackles. So Tavai's been in this league for a good while. He was originally played in 2019 with the Detroit Lions as a former second-round pick back in 2019, number 43 overall. Played a couple seasons with Detroit and then played with the Patriots since 2021 for 5 seasons. And now he signs with the Jacksonville Jaguars here to kind of hopefully see if he can compete in that linebacker room where there's been a lot of discussion, right, in terms of, that starting linebacker spot between Ventrell Miller and Branson Combs, who they both have had their kind of fair shares of shining, with Branson Combs really taking it in terms of making it a competition between himself and Ventrell Miller. But if you're the Jaguars, it never hurts to add another kind of training camp or even just NFL veteran body in training camp to see what Tavai can still bring, right? He was a part of a Patriots team that, while he wasn't necessarily a major contributor, he was part of a defense that did make it to the Super Bowl last year. And I do think that Tavai has some kind of NFL veteran leadership that, outside of Foye Oluokun, you could argue the Jaguars maybe need in that linebacker room, along with Branson Combs, Ventrell Miller, Kaiser whenever he gets back healthy, Parker Hughes obviously as well, that they just recently drafted. So I don't necessarily hate this from a Jaguars perspective in terms of, hey, bringing in a guy. Obviously, they had to make this move whenever Bartlett went down, and we still don't know really the details on Bartlett's injury. He was carted off, like I mentioned earlier, but clearly it was serious enough to where Jacksonville felt like they had to make this move. So Bartlett now no longer with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Insert Jahlani Tavai, who, like I said, veteran, really good. Seems like as a run defender, can contribute in kind of more base downs and run kind of centric downs. But nonetheless, the Jaguars make a signing and then also in a corresponding move waive Bartlett. So really interesting news here that we get here on a Thursday. And I want to talk more about today's kind of shorter practice before the mock game that the Jaguars have tomorrow. So I want to hear from you guys first. Grade the signing of Jahlani Tavai, A, B, C, D, or F. Let me know down in the comments section. If I had to give it a grade, I'd probably give it, honestly, B- to a B. Like, I think overall Tavai, we'll see how much he contributes, but I think it's a really solid signing for Jacksonville. We would not be able to do today's episode of Jags Now, though, guys, if it wasn't for our wonderful friends over at PrizePicks. Today's show is sponsored by PrizePicks, America's #1 sports picks app. Baseball is well underway, along with a ton of other sports that you can cash in with on PrizePicks. Football is right around the corner. In fact, the Hall of Fame game is literally happening right about when you're probably watching this video. But make sure you're locked in with PrizePicks because it is the best place to win cash while watching sports. You can choose from numerous stat projections on PrizePicks, rushing yards, touchdowns, rebounds, assists, home runs, strikeouts, whatever the case may be. Just make sure you use our friends over at PrizePicks as they are available in most states, including California, Texas, and Florida. And you can even do season-long football lineups. If you don't want to mess with any other sports, which I totally understand, lock in a little football season lineup like I got here, a $10 lineup to win 60. I got Jadarian Price more on his rushing yards, more on Parker Washington on his receiving yards, and more on Colson Lovin on his receiving yards. Life's too short to take the less. So get started with our friends over at PrizePicks today. And guys, there's a new user offer. Play your first $5 lineup and get $150 in lineups if you win. Just use code HMA when you sign up. That's right. PrizePicks just switched up their offer, so there's no better time to lock in and win that first lineup. That's code HMA at sign up to get $150 in bonus lineups if you win your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, code HMA, download the app. Shout out to PrizePicks for sponsoring this episode of Jags Now. Okay, so want to talk about today's practice. Didn't really get a chance to get any early content out for you guys. It was just kind of crazy around the chat sports offices, as it will. But we were going to, talk about this signing that the Jaguars made. And then I also wanted to talk about this note from Ryan O'Halloran, who does a great job of covering the Jaguars for Jacksonville.com. He does great work. He had this to say when in regards to the Jaguars making some shuffling around the offensive line. He had kind of a series of tweets that he kind of put out in a thread, and this is what he had to say. Among the Jaguars offensive line juggling today, Walker Little was, had at guard today. Wyatt Milum was playing at right tackle. Emmanuel Pregnon for a blink was at left guard. I think he also got some snaps at right guard. Anton Harrison still at left tackle, and newcomer Sam Mustipher, who we covered here on the channel. He discussed him working at guard, although he's played center throughout his career. They're kind of having him more as an interior offensive lineman in Jacksonville, it sounds like. So Jacksonville is clearly experimenting with different combinations on the offensive line. And I wanted to really discuss this just on the back half of today's show because, look, Cole Van Lanen, as of this current moment, still on PUP. He's trying his best to get ready for week one and be ready for Jacksonville. But in the event that he's not, Jacksonville really wants to, I think major takeaway, they want to make sure that, as many offensive linemen as they can be as comfortable in as many different spots as humanly possible. I mean, we saw that literally with Van Lanen last year, right? He played every position on the offensive line except center, and just did what the Jaguars needed him to do. And then they obviously rewarded him with an extension, at the end of the season. Now the Jaguars are trying to really, I think, do that with a lot of different players, right? Where Anton Harrison, I think this is, each day that kind of goes by with the Jaguars at least testing this, there is more and more of a chance that Anton Harrison could be the week one starting left tackle for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And, if he's your starting left tackle, what does that mean for the rest of the offensive line? Well, one would think, okay, well, maybe you just swing in Walker Little there at right tackle. Well, Wyatt Milum now got an opportunity to potentially start at right tackle, or at least in practice he did today with Little kicking to right guard. I think that's an interesting potential strategy. Obviously, Patrick McCarry's kind of had some rest days. He dealt with a back injury last season. He's an older player, so does Walker Little potentially get into the mix in terms of getting some guard snaps this season? Who knows? I know for a Wyatt Milum perspective, he obviously played tackle previously at West Virginia before he was drafted. He was kind of looked at as a guy that most teams going into that draft kind of had him as a potential, hey, we're probably going to move you into guard, and that's where Jacksonville kind of, I think, is, try to use them at least in practices leading up to this point. Could they potentially look at Milum at tackle and at right tackle? That could be an interesting combination as well for Jacksonville's offensive line. Does Emmanuel Pregnon potentially get involved, the third-round pick out of the University of Oregon? It just kind of goes to show that we might have to dive further into this depending on, just kind of how training camp progresses and how much more Jacksonville kind of continues to tinker with their offensive line. But I think my one major takeaway is that if you think in your mind you have an ideal set of what the Jaguars offense looks like for week one, I'm here to tell you, either something that I don't, which, hey, could be possible, or I don't think you really truly understand what is going on in the Jaguars building. Like, because to me, I think for the most part, Robert Hainsey is going to be locked in at center. I don't think there's any really true competition, at least from what I've read and kind of what I've understood from people who have boots on the ground, that he's your starting center, right? Jonah Monheim will back him up. At left guard, seems like Ezra Cleveland is going to be this team's left guard for 2026 with the potential of either having Pregnon more than likely slide in at left guard for 2027 beyond. That's kind of where I'm projecting, if not sooner, maybe in 2026 at that left guard spot. But I think those two positions are locked in. Outside of that, is it going to be Cole Van Lanen at left tackle? Is it going to be Anton Harrison, right? Does Van Lanen, if he's, not ready, or maybe if he is ready, do the Jaguars consider moving him to right tackle? Do the Jaguars consider playing either Walker Little or Wyatt Milum at right tackle? At right guard, is it Little? Is it McCarry? Is it Pregnon? Milum? Like, there are so many different combinations that I think the Jaguars are, A, going to experiment with, and B, that they could potentially roll out on any given week. So, look, it's a next man up mentality league, and I do think that Jacksonville is going to try to their best to understand, okay, where do we like guys at certain places versus where we like guys at other places. Look, I'll be honest, when I heard Walker Little was taking snaps at right guard, I didn't necessarily love it. He didn't grade out the best in terms of the 2 games he played at right guard last season, but you are obviously paying him a good amount of money to be on your roster. Jacksonville could be sitting there saying, well, we at least got to see if we can get this guy out there, right? Because he's one of your higher paid offensive linemen. So, I mean, Chuma Doga is still out there, right? Like, I don't really necessarily love or feel confident potentially trotting him out there. So, it's going to be interesting in terms of this offensive line, but I think my initial takeaway is that this offensive line, in terms of what could be or should be the starting unit going into 2026, it's far from being decided at this point. So that's just kind of my initial takeaway. Let me know down below in the comment section if, based on everything we know now, and we don't know if Van Lanen will even be ready for week 1, but we'll just kind of throw him in the conversation. If you had to pick a Jaguar starting offensive line for week 1 of the 2026 NFL season, let me know. Go from left tackle, left guard, center, right guard, right tackle. Let me know down below in the comment section, because to be honest, me just sitting here talking in front of the camera right now, like, I would sit there and maybe guess that if I had to project, I'm about getting to the point where it's going to be a coin flip between Anton Harrison and Cole Van Lanen, just because we haven't really heard anything. And Anton Harrison, I mean, he had a quote today from O'Halloran saying that, because he asked him about playing or practicing at left tackle, and he said, let me just pull this up because I don't want to misquote O'Halloran here. Yeah, on working on left tackle, he said it's like riding a bike, because he obviously did it at Oklahoma, so he's very comfortable in potentially making that shift if need be. I think if you're Jacksonville, you're going to explore this potential opportunity, and is it the best move potentially not only for week 1 but going forward? So we'll keep you guys updated from the latest from Jaguars training camp here on the channel. So again, hit that subscribe button. Consider giving us a like. We greatly appreciate any support that you guys have been giving, and we appreciate all the support that you guys have given the channel here recently. So lock us in, hit that subscribe button, and until next time, guys, we'll see you in the next one. Peace.